Parents of tweens, if you're familiar with far-off drop-offs...
Dad, stop, right here.
Or get DMs about what's for dinner, you may be experiencing tween milestones. For your son or daughter, these can start at age 9. HPV vaccination, a type of cancer prevention against certain HPV-related cancers, can start then too.
For most, HPV clears on its own. But for those who don't clear the virus, it can cause certain cancers later in life.
Embrace this phase. Help protect them in the next.
Ask their doctor today about HPV vaccination. Brought to you by Merck.
Are you a forward thinker? Then you need an HR and finance platform that thinks like you do. Workday is the AI platform that helps propel your organization, your workforce, and your industry into the future. Workday, moving business forever forward.
Empowering people and empowering players. I think there's some value in that. Just giving players a couple tools to, go do it on the field, different techniques, and teaching them those. Guys that were mainly double guys on KOR might come to you and say, hey, we need to do this on the next one. And, 95% of the time, I just say, yeah, okay, do it. And then giving them the empowerment to do that, I think helps with buy-in as well, to an extent.
Welcome to Culture OS, presented by Story of the Season, the series where we explore how elite coaches build programs by design, not by default. And if you're new to this series, we've got something special to help you catch up. A free ebook that highlights episodes from Season 1 featuring powerful insights from state championship coaches, a D3 national champion, the new head coach at Central Michigan, Matt Drinkall, and the head coach at South Florida, Alex Golish. Inside the book, you'll find how Matt Drinkall built culture through his coaching staff before the team ever took the field, how Kyle Ralph treats the offseason as the real foundation of Friday night success, how Brad Spencer leads a powerhouse by being relentlessly aligned with the program's mission, what Derek Leonard teaches about playing the long game and building for the future, and how Alex Golish leads with intentionality and humility in a high-stakes Division I role. Every coach featured shares practical systems, not slogans, that you can adapt to fit your program. Grab the free Season 1 ebook at coachandcoordinatonnetwork.com/cultureos. The link is also in the show notes. The series is made possible by Story of the Season, the platform that helps coaches raise money and build community by turning their season into a weekly interactive digital magazine. If you want to raise thousands and showcase your culture like the pros, download the free Culture OS ebook and learn how Story of the Season is helping coaches turn their programs into powerful stories that build buy-in and bring support.
Really excited to have my next guest on Culture OS, Coach Robby Discher, the special teams coordinator and tight ends coach at the University of Illinois. I've had the privilege of knowing Robby for, going on what looks like almost 10 years now, from his stops at Toledo, then to Tulane, where he was an ACC champion, spent some time at the University of Georgia, where as a special teams quality control, where he won a national championship. I think I remember, Coach, you and I got to know each other at your time at Toledo as a special teams coordinator, where your special teams was ranked number 1 and 2 for consecutive years in efficiency rating. I truly believe you're probably one of the best coaches in college football at what you do. You were a 35 under 35 list for the AFCA. And I did do some digging, Coach, and you won a state championship at Kearney High School in 2009. Is that true?
Yeah, that was my first year coaching. I was the freshman quarterbacks coach. I don't know how much of a role I had in us winning state, but Coach Greg Jones was nice enough to give me a ring. So it was fun. I learned a lot from him.
I can't thank you enough. First of all, I think you're one of the better recruiters out there in college football. I also have listened to you speak, and you've been generous enough to share a lot of your stuff from a special team standpoint. I think people are going to benefit from listening about how you've developed your personal philosophy within all your different coaches. So I always have an icebreaker question. My icebreaker question is, in all your different stops, from the high school to the various colleges, all the way up through a national championship, how have those different experiences shaped you as a coach where you are right now in 2025?
Well, the good thing is you mentioned a number of different places I've been. I've worked for some really good head coaches, and I think everybody's got a different way of doing things. And there's obviously more than one right way to get something done, so I've learned, and it helps you get out of your comfort zone a little bit. And I think that part helps you grow. But obviously your job as an assistant coach is to have your unit be as prepared and be as good as it possibly can be within the vision of your head coach. And that's been good for me because I've got to work for a million really, really good head coaches. And that part's been really good for me. And I think that, that's just how it like shapes you as a coach. I mean, it always makes you grow. Like every coach I've ever been with, it's kind of challenged you to maybe do this or do that differently. And, whether you agree with it or not, at the end of the day, it helps you grow. And then sometimes you end up thinking at the end of it, yeah, that guy was right, so.
Absolutely. So I could dive in on that a little bit. Like, what are some of the things that, and I love how you put it, like, you might not agree with it, but in the end, it does change your perspective. Do you have any like aha moments that you saw from your time in your different stops that was like, that's something that I know that I'm going to pull with me into whatever my next phase of my career is?
Yeah, I would say the coach I've worked for who I probably took the most from, and I think my style would be similar, would be Coach Fritz. I was lucky enough to work for him at 2 different spots, but he was awesome because he empowered you, let you do your thing. And then obviously if he had an idea, he would tell you, and he was very clear whether it was like, hey, this is a suggestion or this is what we're doing, and I think, and he was awesome and he let you do it. He didn't micromanage, everything about it. And I learned a ton from him. And I would say about 85% of what we've done different places has been all of his stuff. I might put a tweak or 2 on it, but I think I took a lot from him. And one thing obviously he knows a lot more about it than I do, but working for him and especially the second time going with him at Tulane, he let me do it. He let me run it, and he would have suggestions, and his suggestions ended up always being right. And that's why he's a head coach. But he never was like breathing down your neck on anything. He lets you do it. And that part was good for me. Obviously, you have head coach aspirations and you see different ways to do it. That'd be something I would try to be like.
Currently, when you talk about like that, the empowering of coaches, I think that's probably the key to getting the most out of your coaches. In my experience, is like giving them the rein, they give them the keys to the car. But as a special teams coordinator at such a high level, how difficult is it for you right now to empower the guys who are working under you? And are you trying to consistently be trying to keep yourself in check so that you're still making sure that it's a collective, collaborative work? How does that work for you as a coordinator?
Well, everywhere's different. Here, I probably have more help than I've ever had, obviously. So our assistant special teams coordinator is a guy named Chris Hurd, and he's ran it and been super successful at, FAU and Akron and other places. And he's been an analyst several different spots. And, I think, as far as empowering, he's really good. He could go run it, be extremely good. He's got a bunch of great ideas. And, I guess the way I look at it is a good idea is a good idea. It doesn't matter where it came from. It doesn't matter if it's your head coach telling you, hey, think about this, or if it's somebody that helps you having an idea that's different than yours, that challenges yours and may end up being better. And then empowering people and empowering players too. And I think there's some value in that. Just giving players a couple tools to, go do it on the field. And, an example of that would be, we got a few different ways to do our double team on KOR, right? And different techniques and teaching them those. And then as they get into it, a couple of guys that are core special team guys that were mainly double guys on KOR might come to you and say, hey, we need to do this on the next one. And, 95% of the time, I just say, yeah, okay, do it. I think giving them the empowerment to do that, I think helps with buy-in as well, to an extent. I mean, you can't let the players make all the decisions, but I think giving them enough ownership and listening to the suggestions of the right ones can help. And then in the meeting, if it goes well, give them credit. Like, hey, these 2 guys wanted to jump this double. That's our technique. You got a bigger guy running down, you might come at them as opposed to drop to the 40 or the 35 or whatever it is, and give them credit. And I think that helps with the buy-in and the empowerment of other people.
Highlighted your double team techniques. I'll talk to you about that after we're off the camera here, because I'm going to ask you about your different techniques for KOR. But when you talk about coaching, you've been at a few different stops and you played in college and then you went into the coaching world. Like, my question for coaches is always like, what is like your day-to-day mission with your personal journey as a coach, and what's your long-term vision? You kind of alluded to possibly being a head coach. So I'm curious to see like where you want this journey to take you. And then what was your reason for getting into coaching? It's a 3-part question, like day to day, what are you trying to bring? What's the long-term goal? And why are you doing what you're doing? Because I know at your level, it's such a time consuming, it's a lot on you guys. I know the schedules you keep. So I'm curious to hear about that.
Why you got into coaching. I think we all probably have a similar story, but we all had somebody when we were going through it, whether high school, college, little league, somebody that believed in us and empowered us. And, my high school coach, Chad Valdez, he's now an administrator, but he was awesome to me. And, I know we didn't have the greatest teams when I was there in high school, but he was awesome. And I knew I wanted to coach, and I didn't necessarily know at the time if it was high school or college. And then went on to play small college ball, and I never really played in college. I wasn't I wouldn't even call myself a good player. I was a below average player, but I loved it. I loved being there. I loved being with the teammates, and I loved learning football, and I knew that was something I wanted to do. So that's kind of how I got into it.
Yeah.
And I think by my sophomore, junior year of college, I started to think like, hey, I want to try to do this college thing. I got lucky. I student taught at a school, Park Hills South, which is in Kansas City, where I'm from.
Right.
And then I worked for a guy named Dan Joyner, who he's actually the head coach at my alma mater, North Kansas City now, but he's done a great job in that area. He's a really big name head coach in the Kansas City area. He was the OC at the time, but he played and coached for Coach Fritz at Central Missouri. And then he got me on at Sam Houston State as like a volunteer for the spring.
Yeah.
And then that's how I ended up becoming a GA there, and then a full-time coach. So, we all need somebody to kind of take a chance on us. And for me, that was Dan Joyner calling Coach Fritz, and then Coach Fritz taking a chance on me, and helping me out every step of the way. And and it's been, really good for me. And you asked kind of like day-to-day mission. And I think a lot of us get into this. We want to be head coaches like you. Then that's an aspiration I have. I know that's a lot easier said than done. It doesn't happen for most of us, but that's a daily goal of mine. So how do you go about it? You try to think of things from a head coach lens at times. You know what I mean? I try to do that. Your head coach might tell you something you don't want to hear, like, hey, you're not playing this guy on punt, or whatever the case may be,
Right.
And instead of getting mad about it, you try to think about it like, well, what if I was a head coach? Would I say the same thing? Why would I, or why would I not? You kind of try to look at it in that lens, and you try to grow every day. Like I try to learn something, every day, whether it's offense, defense, special teams, maybe something Coach Bielema does as a head coach, and he does a great job coaching the coaches too, which makes us better,
Yeah.
I think that part's really good. Like and it's not in a confrontational way, but every now and then he'll come by and like show you your individual and say like, hey, have you ever thought about doing it like this? Like, dang, I didn't even know you watched tight end Indy, and that was kind of like, I mean, he does it regularly. Obviously, we all know that now, but like the first time that happened, like, I didn't even know you watched that. But it makes you better,
For sure.
And he always brings up a good point of like, that's your time. You're the head coach of your position. That's your 10, 15, 20 minutes, however long you get that day to work on individual skills and make sure it's right. Sit in the back if it's not right, and it should be detailed and clear mission of why we're doing this, what we're trying to get out of it, clear start, clear finish. Seems like common sense stuff, but maybe something, I never thought about that in depth, but that's, and I think just learning from different people in that way. And, you try to learn something football wise every day. And I'm lucky to be the tight ends coach here. I learned something from those guys in the offensive room every day, and it's that part's been good, whether it's an O-line technique or something about pass pro and, whatever the case may be. But, a different fundamental Coach Stepp has on a route, or, obviously Coach Lonnie, our OC, does a great job, and he's a former tight ends coach. So he's always got, different things, suggestions on stuff. And it's been good. And, Thad Ward in there does a great job. We just got a good staff in there, and it's good. You get to learn something every day.
There's a lot to unpack there. That's, first of all, I love the perspective of how coach is doing with you guys, from coaching the coaches and coming around and, in an appropriate way, kind of challenging you guys to, get the most out of your segments. Cause I know as a head coach, like you do have to look at things from multiple angles. Like there's just always a different angle that maybe somebody's not particularly looking at it because of the effects it might have on something adjacent to what is right in front of you. I think that's such a great thing people can take away, especially as head coaches, is like, looking at the indie segments and coming into and kind of coaching your coaches up, because then everybody feels like they're growing and getting better. One thing I can appreciate about you, and you kind of through that answer alluded to it, is that you're extremely humble. You are who you are. I've always appreciated that about you. And you can tell that you have a passion for the game and you're a lifelong learner. But as a coordinator, you were a coordinator, correct me if I'm wrong, but you won the football coordinator of the year as a graduate assistant. Is that correct?
Yeah, that was the best GA gig of all time. I'll tell you about that. So now you get unlimited coaches, right?
Right.
Back then, and before the unlimited coaches, it was 10 plus like GAs that were allowed to coach. Before that, it was 9.
Yeah.
And then Oklahoma State, obviously they were transitioning from being air raid to being more 11 personnel. And
Yeah.
they had 2 receiver coaches of their 9, which was typical of some air raid programs back then. And so, I got an interview as like a GA to run the special teams and coach the tight ends. It was the best GA job of all time. And then, I was lucky enough that Coach Fritz was like pounding the door for me to get it because I was working for him at Stan Houston at the time. And, I remember one day he just calls me and he's like, "Hey, Mike Gundy's going to call you and he's going to try to set up an interview for this GA job. You need to go and you need to go all in on that. And if you get it, you need to take it." I was like, "Okay, thanks." And I was like, I obviously knew who Mike Gundy was. I didn't know him personally. And then literally 10 minutes later, I get this 405 area code and it says Stillwater, Oklahoma on my phone. I was like, "Oh, dang." And, he's got a very distinguishable voice.
Yes.
You knew it was him right away. And Coach Gundy was awesome to me. And that's one thing I liked about him is he is who he is, and that's one of the biggest things I took from him, because I think people that have worked with me might say I have a unique personality, but, I think players will like you as long as they see that you care about them, you can make them better, and you're real.
Yeah.
And I think you go in, try to be somebody you're not, that's going to be an issue. But, I was lucky to get that GA job, and you walk into the tight end room and you got Jeremy Seaton and Blake Jarwin in there, who are both really good players, who are walk-ons, who earned scholarships. And Jarwin had a NFL career with the Cowboys for a long time. And then, you're also the special teams coordinator, and your returner is Tyreek Hill. So yeah.
That's a good situation.
After that year, and you mentioned winning an award, my head got a little big. And then the next year, when Tyreek Hill wasn't our returner, it kind of came back down to reality.
A valuable lesson to be learned right there, right?
Some of these clips we scored on, it's like, man, I can't even show these to the team because it wasn't even set up. It's just that guy, So I think, but that's the lesson. Like, you want to be good, go get good players.
Yeah, very true.
That's something you can take from that, because at the end of the day, everybody's going to have schemes and techniques they feel good about. And I think you can out-coach and out-teach people, and I do believe in that. But at the end of the day, the players are more important.
Yeah.
So, and
absolutely.
Welcome to Culture Story, presented by Story of the Season, a special segment within our Culture OS podcast. Today, I'm joined by Coach Brian Kaminsky, the head coach at Sun Prairie East High School in Wisconsin and the president of Wisconsin Football Coaches Association. Coach Kaminsky has done a remarkable job building a sustainable program with strong community support. And this past year, his team raised over $20,000 using Story of the Season to showcase their story. Coach, thanks for being with us today.
Thanks for having me. Appreciate it.
Coach, let's talk a little bit about your culture. As a veteran head coach, what have been the guiding principles or core values that continue to shape your culture at Sun Prairie East?
What we really build things upon here at Sun Prairie is we talk about control the dash. It's been very important for us. It's become what we're all about. And simply what that means, one day, unfortunately, we're not going to be live on this earth, and some of us might have a tombstone. And on that tombstone, there's 4 numbers that represent the year that we're born. And then, unfortunately, there's 4 numbers that represent the year that we pass away. But in between, there's a dash mark. And we tell our student athletes, our parents, our coaches, everybody we come into the program, that dash mark is controlled by you, right? Your coaches don't have a say in it. Your parents, girlfriends, boyfriends. It's what you need to do to be great on and off the field. And you do it with discipline. Do you discipline setting your goals high and working to do those? Do you use discipline A as your attitude? Are you somebody that accepts responsibility? Or are you somebody that likes to blame and complain to other people? Or, coach doesn't like me. We don't like you. Do we have favorites? Yes, we have favorites. The kids practice every day and work their tail off. That's a favorite, right? Discipline, attitude, strength. I'm glad I'm 52 at times, because I couldn't imagine growing up with everything that these young people have going on in their lives with social media. I think it's out there before they even think about doing it. It's already out there on social media platforms. So can you be strong-willed? And we talk to our student athletes about hanging around people with the same values as you. That's going to make life a whole lot easier. So discipline, attitude, strength, and habits. We're a strong believer that your daily habits will decide your future. And it takes some anywhere from 17 to 28 days to become a habit. And let's create those good habits now. It's great when you wake up in the morning and you got that routine and you know what you need to do, and you don't have to think about doing, you're just doing it. So Control the dash has been huge for us. It's something we've been priding ourselves on. We put it on all of our clothing. If you ask our kids, I think they know what it means. And the nice thing is it's not just football related, right? It's life related. It pertains to myself. It pertains to my kids. It pertains to my family, students, everybody. So we're pretty proud of that and something we totally believe in here.
Yeah, the changes that we've seen really over the last decade and now would seem at like a breakneck pace for these kids certainly are something to deal with. But you guys have been able to sustain success for the long haul. What have you found is the biggest key to sustaining that success year in and year out, regardless of what changes come along the way?
Well, we've got great kids, right? We've got great student athletes here, that's for sure. And we've got a coaching staff that really cares. And we're not afraid to tell the kids we love them, right? And that's important. I think once you get your student athletes to believe that you really care for them and they're greater good, they'll do anything they can for you. And that's important to us. We got that culture here. We got a big coaching staff. We've got like 25 coaches on staff. But I think what tells me we're doing things the right way is I think about 10 to 12 of them played for us at some point over the last 28 years. And that speaks volumes to the type of culture we've created. And our kids have maintained and risen to the next level. We have a leadership program we do with our student athletes in the off season. We get together, read some books, and talk about how to impact our program in a positive way. And we've had some great things come from that. And the nice thing is it's player-led, right? We believe in our program being player-led and allowing our student athletes to make a lot of the choices. We're here to guide them, but we rely on them to make a lot of those hard decisions for us.
You talked about how every player in your program knows what the dash means. And the great part of what you're doing with Story of the Season, it really gives you the opportunity to connect your culture with the community. And the platform also helped you raise $20,000 for your program. How did that come together for you?
Yeah, I met Chris Herman at a football clinic here, and it was great. Something we jumped on board with, and it's been a great tool for our program. I think it helped us get to another level in just exposure. You know, we believe in community support. Our community has been tremendous here in Sun Prairie, and they support us in a positive way. And, it's hard. Sometimes you got grandma that live in Arizona or people that live, I know my father-in-law lived up north, a former coach here, but now he's able to get emails and to get links and stay involved in the program in a different way, in a unique way, right? Where every week he gets updated with exactly what happened, and our student athletes get that. And at the end of the year, they get a yearbook type thing together where it's going to go with them for the rest of their lives. It's invaluable, right? They might not realize how great it is now, but we've all been there, right? I'm 52. Like to go back and look for some high school stuff. I got the old VHS tape, right? It don't work anywhere anymore. I can't find anywhere to play it, but they got a QR code that's always going to bring them back to that moment and how special it was. Because, you're not going to always remember every win and loss, but you're going to remember hanging with your buddies and pulling, remember that one play in this game and to be able to see that right then and there. And it's a great way for us to give back to our community as well. And our community supports us and get it out to other people. I think that's helped people stay in touch with Sun Prairie East football. And we're big in giving back to our community. People need to work at the Sunshine Place, which is a place in town that helps support people in need. And we'll do whatever we can to help them. And then just be able to share this out to everybody is just phenomenal.
You've traditionally done a golf outing, and certainly you can never raise enough funds for your program. But how did you pair that with Story of the Season to create bigger sponsorship opportunities?
Yeah, we do a golf outing for a player that passed away called the Gibby Scholarship, and we take a big part of the proceeds and donate it to graduating seniors for college. I think we've given out over $70,000 now over the last 12 to 15 years for graduating kids going to college. And what we do is we know the Story of the Season has an ad. We also like to do whole sponsorships through our golf outings. So we connected those two things together to keep the price down a little bit. But, the views that these people get through Story of the Season is just so much more valuable than a normal program where it used to be a handheld thing that was put together pretty nicely. I'm not going to lie. I thought our quarterback club did a tremendous job of that. But now that we got this, it's so much better. I think last year we had over 6,000 clicks on our Story of the Season program during the season, and that was year one, right? We know this is going to grow and continue because people are like, I didn't get this email. How do I get a part of this?
They've done a nice job of utilizing the platform to do some other things too. And one added bonus has been recruiting profiles. How's that piece helped your players and your program?
Phenomenal. I used to go back and you create a spreadsheet and give it out to coaches, and now we got this recruiting profile that has all the information they want. I know we've been doing this a long time, so we're fortunate enough to get a lot of college coaches through this area, and they're amazed. The first time I sent it out to them, I'm like, oh my gosh, this is unbelievable, Coach. How did you do it? I'm like, didn't do anything, right? Gave all the information, Story of the Season. They created it. It's got their huddle link on there. It's got their Twitter handle. It's got a coach's little write-up on them. It's got their grade point average. It's got their 40-yard dash, whatever you want to have in a recruiting deal. The recruiting profile has that. The feedback we get from them is unbelievable. They're so impressed by the quality of the work with it and how easy it is to look through and get all the information they need from all these guys and the student athletes in one setting.
For coaches listening who want to both elevate their culture and connect with their community, what advice would you give them?
Get in story of the season right now. It's a no-brainer. People are a little bit worried about how much work it might be. It's really not much work, and for the exposure, and we all do this, right, for our student athletes, and the amount that they benefit from this is tremendous. It's something they're going to have for the rest of their lives. You're going to have grandma and grandpa that live in New York be able to follow along with you. It's easy. It's a great partnership, because I will call it a partnership. We work with them and they work with us as far as setting up the ads and having somebody on board. I think our student athletes have really enjoyed it. I know the feedback we get from not only them, but family members throughout the country is they enjoy it. And that's, it's like getting a high school yearbook. You're going to have that forever, and it's interactive forever. So why would you not do it? Why would you not want to be 50 years old and have your children or possibly grandchildren and show them how great you were at this time? So it's a no-brainer to me. I would recommend doing it to anybody. It's easy, and the most important thing is that they're a great company to work with. We all want to make money, but to me, it's the bigger about the relationship piece with them too, and they take pride in how they do things. So it's phenomenal.
Coach Kaminsky, we appreciate you joining us and sharing the work you're doing to grow the game and support your kids the right way, and certainly want to wish you and your program the best of luck this year.
Thanks for having me here. I really appreciate it.
Story of the Season continues to be a tool that helps programs tell their story, raise meaningful funds, and give every player a place in the spotlight. If you're a coach looking to elevate your program and capture the full picture of your team, visit storyoftheseason.com to learn more.
In 2014, you mentioned winning that award. Well, Tyreek was our returner.
Yeah.
In 2015, we went from being really good to really average, but we were probably better, like technique and that type stuff, blocking things up. It's just, and we had good returners. We just didn't have Tyreek.
Yeah, you didn't have one of the best to ever do it.
Generational guy.
You talk about that a little bit, how you took that, the lesson to be learned there. So now you've been doing this over 10 years, going on, 12 years now, even more. How has your philosophy evolved as a coordinator at your different stops? Where are you at right now with the standpoint of these are my pillars, these are the non-negotiables, this can't change?
Yeah, I think there's some techniques I truly believe in that I think have helped us and made us better and can be the winning edge. But you're always trying to tweak those, right? You're always trying to improve on those. And Coach Bielema has been great with that, having different ideas on how to tweak stuff. Going to Georgia for a year was great. I got some different things I've never really been exposed to. And, I was in a backseat role there. I wasn't the guy running it or anything like that. But, and then getting hooked back up with Coach Fritz at Tulane, obviously he had evolved and, kind of merging what he had done and what we had done. It's always good to evolve that stuff. But to me, I think identifying the right players. So how do you do that? You do that through drill work, and the drill needs to, if your drill work doesn't show up at the end of season, finding game examples of it, you need to change it. Mm-hmm. So that's something I believe in. So you're always trying to adapt and find new ways to do it. But there's certain techniques I think show up a bunch throughout the test of time. And then having genuine relationships with your players, and I think that's important, and getting the guys motivated to play special teams. Everybody's going to have those guys that make the travel squad because they're a core special team guy. And those guys are invaluable to a program and, all that. But how do you get the guy that's maybe your third best safety playing 25 plays a game on defense? How do you get that guy motivated to cover kicks?
Yeah.
And how do you, and to me, I think there's different ways to do that. But something that Chris Hurd helps us with is in preparing these meetings, and we'll show if we're talking a technique or whatever on punt return, we'll show it, the drill we're going to do, and then we'll show a couple game examples of our guys and how it helps us, and then we'll always try to tie that in with an NFL clip.
Yeah.
When some of the techniques are different, I get it. It's a different world. The punt scheme's way different, the new KOR rule. But yeah, as much of that as you can do, and then we'll take it one step further. If you can find guys they know doing it, for instance, when I was at Toledo, we had, Reggie Gilliam, Tyson Anderson, those guys were core special team players, and now they're still in the league.
Yeah.
Kadar Holman, those type guys. And then, you could grab their clips from when they moved on from the NFL. And that's what we do here is even guys, me and heard weren't around for at Illinois, but find guys that are covering kicks that played at Illinois that were these guys' teammates before we got there, and show that. And we did that this year a bunch with Tip Ryman. He was played for us in 23, me and Hurd's first year there at Illinois. And then, he's on 3 special teams with the Cardinals, and he's like their second tight end. So just finding as many clips of him doing it, and then like, hey guys, this is going to help you to the next level. So, I think you're proving how it helps them, but also showing how it affects winning too.
Absolutely.
And I think just praising players when they do it right, not just like on punt return, the returner. I think, your guys blocking the gunners, whatever you want to call those guys, but your corners, your jammers, whatever you're going to call those guys. But like, that's a really tough job. And when they do it right, giving them a ton of credit in meetings and stuff like that, maybe if you can give them a hat or a shirt or whatever, but like anything to like empower them in front of their teammates, especially if it's a younger, unproven guy. But I think that stuff is beneficial. And to me, it's just believing in what you do, having a clear vision, and and getting your players, empowering your players, and getting your players to buy in and be good at it.
So with that clear vision that you talk about, like, how are you building your identity with, the special teams identity within the framework of the program that you're with for that, at that time? Because, every different head coach is going to have a different message they want to get. How are you taking the program message and building your special teams identity with that? I'd be curious to hear about that.
Well, like you said, it's all got to be within the framework of the head coach, and whether you agree with it or not, I've had certain head coaches that want to come after 80% of the punts. And I've had certain ones where it's like an act of Congress to get to come after one, so, which is fine. You got to just whatever, and you can say what you want.
Right.
Obviously have conversations with people and, one-on-one conversations on why you think this and that. But at the end of the day, they're in charge. If they tell you, I want it this way, then it's got to be, and you got to believe in it. You know what I mean? So, and then you got to sell out. This is why we're doing this, why it's going to be great for us, and I think another thing that kind of helps too is having branding your special teams. You know what I mean? Like different places, like one place it was Game Changers, one place it was Thrive, whatever it is, something the kids like, but just having them buy in and being able to brand that. And, and I think another thing too is most people are going to grade their guys on offense, defense. Why wouldn't you do it on special teams after a game? You know what I mean? Players of the game and all that. So like anything you do on special team or on offense, defense, to me needs to be done in the kicking game too. Otherwise your guys will see it as less important.
Do you mind me asking, you could tell me to jump in the lake, but like for this particular season, what's the branding and what's the message for this year's specials?
We change that every couple of years, and we don't have that right now. Me and Hurd have been talking about that. We start spring ball here in like 5 days. We probably got to come up with that. Something along the line of like changing the game changers, Thrive, or a couple that we've done. But you're always trying to, and we take player suggestions on that too. So it's I would love to tell you that we change it every couple of years. We're gonna change that up here soon, but what that's going to be, I'll shoot you a text when we decide.
I appreciate that.
Probably got to decide that here pretty soon, so starting Wednesday. But you always got to have like a couple of ways to introduce it on why you're doing it. So we probably got to get going on that.
It's like, especially at the high school level, and probably even more so at the collegiate level, where guys are coming in and everybody, especially at the Big Ten level, everybody was an all-star. Even the lowest guy on the roster was probably the best high school player on the team, and just trying to getting them to value those repetitions and see that lens where they can come in and be an impact player. You're not the first coach collegiately who has told me how much they rely on NFL film. And it's like very similar to what we do at the high school level, where we're going to show colleges running the scheme that we're running so that they find value in what we're doing. That's always very interesting to me. And I think it's something that people could take away, because at our level, a lot of it's just trying to keep numbers and keep everybody interested in getting them to believe in that specials and that phase of the game is not an ancillary part of the game. And just as pivotal, if not more pivotal, it's the junction point, right? Between the two phases, offense and defense. And if it's not the most important thing, like I'm a special teams guy, and I just think I've heard you speak enough, and I think think the way that you build value in is really unique. And you can see the proof is in the numbers that your teams put out consistently over all your years. So it's obviously something you do really, really well. So a chance for you to brag on yourself, like within that, like what's like one thing that you feel like you do particularly well, more so, and that maybe is just a little different than maybe what the conventional guys are doing?
I don't know. I have everywhere I've been, I've had good relationships with the staff and the players. And I think that's number one. People trusting you and liking you and wanting to play. And I think that's important. And, empowering players. And, I think we do a good job of teaching technique and proving the why of it. I think that's important, especially in today's kids. Like,
sure.
And I'm probably a couple years older than you, but when me and you were in high school, we never asked, like, why are we doing this? Our coach told us to do it. We just did it, And I don't know if that's the case. It is with some kids, and you appreciate those kids, but it's not with everybody. So, showing the why and, how will it help our team, but how will it help you too? And, I think just being genuine in who you are, and I think don't try to be somebody you're not. There's a million different ways to be successful. Like whenever you leave St. Charles North, whoever replaces you doesn't need to be the next Rob Pomazak. They need to be themselves. Like they're surely going to take something from you.
Right.
I mean, you've won a million games there, but they come in and try to change their personality to your personality and be you 2.0. It's not going to work. And that doesn't mean they can't take some things you've done. And obviously you got a successful program, so they can't take that doesn't mean they can't take things you've done or, all that, or use your ideas. That's great, but they got to be themselves. And I think that's something we do a good job of, and I think breaking up the monotony of meetings, I think our guys would tell you meetings are fun. They're not, not all of them. I mean, sometimes you might be crunched on time or you might be angry about something the day before. Like there's a time to be stern and corrective, and there's a time to, cut a joke in meetings, or every now and then have random trivia, and I'm kind of a nerd. I like watching outer space documentaries and stuff when I have free time and my kids are asleep. So every now and then I'll give them a random outer space fact to start the day. And does that help you win games? Probably not, but it's just unique and just being yourself. And I think letting the kids see who you are, and I think people would tell you I'm probably a different personality, and I've worked for some really good coaches, but I'm not going to be them, I think you see coaches at all levels, high school, college, NFL. Sometimes when they fail, they try to be somebody they're not. They all of a sudden think they're a head coach, or they were a GA and got to the position coach role and think they got to be this guy. It doesn't mean you don't take ideas from somebody, but at the end of the day, you got to be yourself. And I think kids are smart enough to realize if you're genuine or if you're not. And if you're not genuine, they don't want to play for you. That's just my opinion. And I think, and none of those things that we talked about are any kind of scheme related, and
sure.
But I think those things are all pretty important.
It's like, that just speaks to the whole point of like why I wanted to speak with different coaches, because like, it's not, I truly like, there's so much out there on scheme, Robby. Like, it's like, you can just go anywhere and get scheme, but like, look at the guys who are continually successful. And I do think a lot of it's what they're doing away from the scheme. Like we all can teach ball, but like, how are you building relationships? And when you said like, being who you are, and it's like, but you always have seemed so comfortable. Like not a lot of coaches, or maybe this is just more personal for me, is like when I first got the head position, I was struggling to find out the type of head coach I wanted to be. And you're being somebody you're not, and then you really feel uncomfortable because you're showing up not authentically. And then things really turned for me when I decided I'm just going to do this authentically, and I'm just going to be who I am. Wins, right, wrong, or indifferent. I'm just going to do this. This is my one shot. I'm going to do it the way I need to do it. But like, where did that self-confidence come in from you, where it's always been from stop to stop to stop? Like, this is who I am. I'm comfortable with who I am. Because I think that takes a tremendous amount of like know thyself, but also a lot of self-belief. And I'm always curious when guys are able to do that.
I do think it's important to believe in yourself, because if you don't believe in yourself, how will you get others to do it?
Correct. That's awesome.
So I do think that's important, but I also think it's important not to like try to like brag in front of the players. I think that can be kind of off-putting. So how do you build that? It takes time. I mean, there's no shortcut to it. You just got to like prove to them that you can make them better and that you care about them. And that comes through the course of time. You're not going to walk in. I think some people do it wrong. And in day one meetings come in and say, I've done this, I've done this, I've done this. I don't know if that's the way to go. When they can look that stuff up sometimes, I don't know if they do or not, but like I just think like building relationships in that room happen over the course of time, and they've got to trust you and believe in you and know you care about them. And I don't know if there's any like shortcut to that. I think things just got to be genuine, and I think players from all walks of life, like there's guys on our team who come from all different backgrounds and everything, and different backgrounds than myself. That doesn't mean we can't get along. It doesn't mean we can't have a good relationship or really care for each other. But, I'm not going to come in and try to act like something I'm not, and I think players see through that pretty quick. When you come in and try to be different than who you really are, I think that's off-putting, and I think that would affect you in a negative way. So that's, I don't know if there's any like secret to it. Just be who you are every day, and and when you get that 10, 15, 20 minutes, whatever it is, in front of the team every day, like that's your Super Bowl. Like, like be passionate about it, be prepared. Like I think, and one thing Coach Bielema talks about all the time to us is whether it's a position meeting or a unit meeting, whatever, but he talks to us about like, and he's absolutely right, but players see when you're not prepared. And no one's 100%. We've all had those meetings, right? Where, man, that didn't go well. I should have put that clip here. Like, I forgot about it. We've all had those meetings. Like, I'm not going to act like I haven't, but the players see that. Like, if you're super prepared, meeting 1, meeting 2, meeting 3, and all of a sudden you get to meeting 4, and it looks like it's thrown together at the last second, and you don't know what's on there. And like, they see that, you know? So, whether it's a tight end meeting or a kickoff meeting in front of the team, like they see that, So I think just being prepared and having a clear plan in there. And I think just doing it day in, day out, and one thing Coach Bielema says to us as assistants, one of the greatest things we can give them is consistency, and I think it's like that in front of the team too. And they want to see you consistently be who you are. You're a head coach, you run the punt team. Like, are you going to play a guy on there you don't trust or is inconsistent?
Right.
There's no chance. So like, that's something that helps an organization is just, and I think that comes with over time, but who are you going to trust in those spots? Whether you're a head coach looking at your assistants or you're an assistant coach looking at what players to put on the field. It's just, you're going to go with guys you trust. Like, we get a punt block, knock on wood, I hope it doesn't happen. It's happened before, unfortunately, but it's going to be with guys we trust, because if you get one blocked and it's a talented kid out there who does it wrong in practice all the time, like you feel like you let the team down, you're at the end of the day, you're going to play the guys you trust and let it ride, and it is what it is. You're going to empower them and give them every tool they need to be successful. And, it's just guys that are consistently good at it. And I think, I got off on a tangent. I can't remember what your original question was.
No, it's great. Sorry. Dude, that's awesome. Like, because it just goes into like how, like we're talking about self-belief and just like how you were like, I think what you talked about, you said it's like, if you get 10 to 15 minutes with it, with the team, that's your Super Bowl. Be prepared. So many coaches come in and they want this, they want the next step, they want the next step, they want the next step. And they're always, I feel like sometimes they overlook that the next step is right in front of you right now. Like every time you got an opportunity to be a head coach, whether it's 10 minutes with your positional room, or if coach gives you the format in a whole team meeting where you get a chance to present on stuff, like that is your Super Bowl, and that's your chance to be a head coach for that time. And then those opportunities expand as you go through your career. And I think sometimes people overlook that. They're just expecting that big position to come their way, and they're missing the small little breadcrumbs that are coming every single day, and those opportunities to really show your competency level and show that you're the right person for that position. And that's how you get the trust that you get with your guys, because you show up every day and you're super consistent. Man, if I could give people one about like, just be consistent, like just show up and put the work in, right? Like there's really no other secret, but you can't take the days off. Like you said, like we've all been sitting in that room where like the meeting is just falling apart, and it's, to me, I feel like it's like a slow death. Like it's like, it hits you in a different place. But that was fantastic. I really appreciate you going into that level of depth. What type of coach are you on a Saturday? I can't imagine you're a yeller.
I'm not a yeller, and everybody's different. I've worked for guys that are, I've worked for guys that aren't, you just got to be who you are. I'm really not a yeller. I think if you ask our tight ends, they would tell you like, when am I going to yell if it's the same mistake that happened repeatedly or a lack of effort? That's really the only time I go off. And I would say I go off in practice twice a season, and Now I'll coach and be stern, and I have energy out there, and I'll run around, and I take pride in correcting our players, and whether it's a tight end or, the field guard on KOR, I take an extreme amount of pride in that, but I'm not going to run around and scream and yell.
Mm-hmm.
That's not who I am, and if that's not who you are, I don't know if the players are going to take you seriously if you try to be that guy, and I don't do it a lot, but when I do, I think it's like, oh, dang, he's mad. Maybe I should do this. And really, it's like a lack of effort thing is what sets me off. Like, I'm good. If you miss a block or bad technique or, hey, there's one-on-one. And sometimes as coaches, you got to realize you put that kid in a bad situation.
Sure.
That ain't that kid's fault. He got run by on KOR and you had him blocking this dude he can't block.
Right.
It ain't the kid's fault. So like sometimes you put them in bad situations. You got to own that moment too. But yeah, to me, the only thing that'll set me off is like a lack of effort thing. People are going to make physical mistakes, and every now and then as long as the mental mistakes aren't continuous, in the same thing. But really, I would say it's a lack of effort that would make me, I guess, go off. But no, to answer your question, I wouldn't describe myself as a screamer or yeller.
Well, I appreciate that. I can't imagine you would be. So I got 2 questions left because I'm coming towards the end of our time, and I can't tell you, Robby, how much I appreciate you giving your time today to do this. It's been really, really enlightening. So one of the questions I asked is not about football. It's just, how do you negotiate the professional goals you have with being a husband, a father, and all the things that come along with it? Because that's a lot of times coaches struggle with that because of the time commitments.
Yeah. It is hard. In coaching college football and high school football, there's a lot of time commitments. It's not, as you know, for you being a high school head coach, your day doesn't end when the bell rings at the end of the day. You know what I mean? Like,
correct.
That's just the beginning of your time. So the biggest thing, and we're all guilty of this, and honestly, I got to do a better job of this. I can't let what happens in the office, or maybe we had a bad day on a Saturday, affect when I'm home with my kids and my wife. You just can't. And I'm guilty of that. Like, we get a kickoff housed on us, or our tight ends don't play good or something like that. You come home, you're in a bad mood. You lost the game and you feel like you let the team down, and it's easier said than done. And that's something I got to grow in. But when you're there, you got to be there, and like never once have I come home after a bad game or bad performance and any of my kids mentioned any of it. You know what I mean? So like, it's not their fault, just they just want to see you. And when you get time off, spending quality time with them. And like today, when we get off this Zoom, me and my 7-year-old are going to go to this reptile exhibit in Bloomington. Yeah. And then we're going to go eat Mexican food, which I'm not a big Mexican food fan, but you know who is? Quinn Disher. So we're going to go do it, and my older kids are in high school now, and they got a high school dance. So we'll be back and see them take pictures. Unfortunately, my freshman daughter has a date. And so I don't know how I feel about that. We talk about technique and fundamentals. I made sure to cover with her and him, like any dancing, you need your elbows to be like locked elbows, no bent elbows. So I'll make sure, but no, just stuff like that and being there for them. And, you can't, my son's a senior in high school this year. You can't make all of his games, but, coaching college and you might have a road game, but being there every chance you can, and it's not perfect, you wish you had more, but just making the time of it when you have it. And, I try to do the best job I can of when we're off or I'm off. Now you're calling recruits and stuff too. There's no way around that. Right. But and texting those kids as well. But, you just got to be there as best you can.
Well, I think that's, such a fantastic viewpoint, and it is a struggle, and a lot of it, we all take stuff home with us. But I do think one thing I've always appreciated about you is that I know that your family is always first. And, when people talk about balance, it's not a 50-50. There's different times when the balance can change. Like, again, I appreciate your time today and, giving us a couple minutes, when you can be with your family. So thanks so much, Coach. Last question. What is harder in your opinion, building success or sustaining it? And why?
That's a good question. I would say sustaining it, because everybody, when you build, they're both incredibly difficult, but when you build it, that's great. But how many teams are able to sustain it over time? It's hard. And then when you build success, teams are targeting you. It's just everybody's going to give you their best shot. When it's like this year, we played Michigan, who had won the national title the year before. Like, they got our best shot, and that part's hard for them. And, and I think this year for us, we won 10 games last year, which is the most we've won in a long time. And I think Coach B's done a great job of not being complacent, and that kind of trickles down to the assistants and the players. But and that's always a challenge, to take what you've done and go to the next step and always be urgent in everything you're doing and never be comfortable, and that's something, working for Jason Candle, who's one of the best coaches in college football, in my opinion. And one thing he used to say to coaches and players all the time is like, I can't remember his exact words, but something about the most growth happening when you're uncomfortable. And that's something I've always kind of taken, and, get out of your comfort zone and grow. And, he used to have great messaging for that. And, you look at the MAC and, who's been, in my opinion, and yes, I am biased, I get that, but who's the best program in the MAC? It's the Toledo Rockets. And it's, in my opinion, it's because of Jason Candle. And, they got a million other good assistants, and it's a good program and all that. But yeah, that's something he used to always say. And he challenged the coaches on that, challenged the players. And I thought that was awesome. That he made me a lot better. I can tell you that.
Coach Robby Discher, special teams coordinator and tight ends coach at the University of Illinois. I cannot thank you enough for the time you spent with us today, and enjoy the rest of your day, Coach, and best of luck to you guys this next season. Appreciate your time.
Yeah, thanks, Coach. Always appreciate you, and keep sending us your players. We appreciate that too.
Try. Thanks, Coach.
Story of the Season helps high school football teams get media coverage like the pros, raise money, and memorialize their season. Each week, they design a digital magazine that recaps each game with photos, videos, interviews, write-ups, and highlights. At the end of the season, all chapters are combined into a comprehensive printed yearbook. It's the ultimate keepsake and a senior gift. Teams can raise tens of thousands of dollars by giving sponsors unmatched value with interactive ad space and unlimited viewership. It's time to try something new this season. Visit storyoftheseason.com to share your story. Tired of dealing with your boring print media guide that gets trampled on and forgotten about after the first game of the season? Story of the Season is changing the media game with their 3-in-1 weekly digital program, lucrative fundraising, and end-of-season printed yearbook. Give your program media coverage like the pros this season and raise money. Story of the Season offers the best of both worlds with digital weekly media guides and a printed end-of-the-season yearbook. Teams raise an average of $10,000 by selling interactive ad space in their digital media guide. Ditch your old school media guide and go with Story of the Season hybrid print digital platform. Learn more at storyoftheseason.com.